Cadet Tuyak, National VIPs, President and Commander-in-Chief, Armed Forces of the Philippines, His Excellency Rodrigo Roa Duterte, Secretary of National Defense, Honorable Delfin Negrillo Lorenzana, Military VIPs, Chief of Staff, Armed Forces of the Philippines, General Andres C. Centeno, Armed Forces of the Philippines, Commanding General, Philippine Army, General Romeo Brownard Jr., Armed Forces of the Philippines, Commander Army Reserve Command, Major General Fernando B. Pilite, Philippine Army, Group Commander, 9th Regional Community Defense Group, Colonel Patricio S. Tumales, Infantry, General Staff Corps, Philippine Army, Commission Officer, 902nd Zamboanga del Norte Community Defense Center, Major Eladio V. Lumantas, Civil Engineer, Philippine Army, President, Jose Rizal Memorial State University System, Dr. Delinda R. Lapo, National Service Training Program Director, Dr. Richard G. Daimil, National Service Training Program Unit Head, Dr. Noel G. Lupicelio, Commandant, Jose Rizal Memorial State University Army Reserve Officer Training Corps Unit, Major Eladio V. Lumatas, Civil Engineer, Philippine Army, Assistant Commandant, Second Lieutenant Nicanor B. Umnimaga, Reserve Philippine Army, Chief Clerk, Corporal Roderick C. Acoimo, Infantry, Philippine Army, Tactical Officer, Captain Cesar C. Bala, Reserve Philippine Army, Second Lieutenant Joe Peter M. Villaros, Reserve Philippine Army, Senior Tactical NCOs Reservist, Admin NCO, Sergeant Jernel R. Lapot, Reserve Philippine Army, Tactical NCOs Reservist, Private First Class, John Ray A. Maglasang, Infantry, Philippine Army, Staff Sergeant Gerald Rich H. Soto, Reserve Philippine Army, Staff Sergeant Michael Ray Elvin S. Boreros, Reserve Philippine Army, Sergeant Nancy E. Aranquez, Reserve Philippine Army, Sergeant Maynard O. Comiselia, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Rodel G. Patangan, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Richie E. De La Rosa, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Charlene E. Tagapan, Reserve Philippine Army, Graduate Military Assistant, KNJE, Private Adams N. Sumalpong, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Nelo B. Lagradelia, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Jefferson Paglinawan, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Rico Jack G. Tawataw, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Glenmar G. Olinan, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Shahara May M. Halen, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Jisrael M. Pascolado, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Vincent Jubilee G. Cadano, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Ray R. Dayao, Reserve Philippine Army, Private John Ray P. Valladares, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Joven Ray E. Sakal, Reserve Philippine Army, Private John Fritz C. Cuenca, Reserve Philippine Army, Private John Paul P. Yorong, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Michelle B. Andicoy, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Vance Alester L. Pagasian, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Margel S. Lagamon, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Glezel Faith D. Carreño, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Glyza Claire C. Canoog, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Giseline Elopre, Reserve Philippine Army, Private Mevel B. Singkay, Reserve Philippine Army, Brigade Corps Commander, Cadet Colonels J.P. Monterrey Ramos, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Executive Officer Disciplinary Officer, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Roderick L. Cadorna, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Brigade S1 Adjutant Officer, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Bless T. Manlupi, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Brigade S2 Intelligence Officer, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Ronel V. Bailon, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Brigade S3 Operation Officer, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Ramel P. Samson, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Brigade S4 Logistic Officer, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Shelami P. Azores, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Brigade S7 Liaison Officer, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Jamaica S. Lagodas, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 1st Battalion Commander, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Jumariti Usabel, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 2nd Battalion Commander, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Zephyr C. Perigora, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 1st Battalion Executive Officer Disciplinary, Cadet Major John Mark T. Clemenia, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 1st Battalion S1 Adjutant, Cadet Major Kathleen Rose E. Apao, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 1st Battalion S2 Intelligence, Cadet Major Jericho T. Osabel, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 1st Battalion S3 Operation, Cadet Major Jason A. Hamarling, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 1st Battalion S4 Logistic, Cadet Major Maalona Jane B. Alpon, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 1st Battalion S7 Liaison, Cadet Major Chenli R. Silva, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 2nd Battalion Executive Officer Disciplinary, Cadet Major Brian P. Banuelos, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 2nd Battalion S1 Adjutant, Cadet Major Robelin B. Magnawong, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 2nd Battalion S2 Intelligence, Cadet Major Hansel V. Susubrado, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 2nd Battalion S3 Operation, Cadet Major Remark O. Lakay, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 2nd Battalion S4 Logistic, Cadet Major Mary Joy C. Maghinay, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. 2nd Battalion S7 Raison, Cadet Major Rowella Bernadette B. Kenlog, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Meripes A. Lidama, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Aaron Z. Kalasang, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Stephen J. P. Takliad, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Juvenal P. Katilok, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Christian J. Sardani, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Aryan Fay E.N. Palangan, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Bobby Janela G. Cañete, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Geno E. Carbonilla, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Kent O. Dampaila, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Raymark S. Anyo, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Brittany D. Agit, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Rickman V. Cabanag, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Major Mark Jen L. Proceso, Reserve Officer Training Corps, First Class. Cadet Captain Lester V. Ikaw, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Richard S. Samoras, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Joseph B. Meral, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Erwin T. Palomares, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Aurelio L. Flores, Jr., Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Kent Roy P. Maghanoy, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Owen Vincent A. Somanduran, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Jefferson N. Makiling, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Blaze Jason H. Iting, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain May Cadet Captain May Angel S. Conato, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Rimar B. Bemos, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain John Kenneth B. Deserdo, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Jonathan D. Gumanad, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Kevin M. Bilicano, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Lenchi Kyle S. Abaco, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Cadet Captain Lavely Jane T. Maginsay, Reserve Officer Training Corps, Second Class. Military Professionalism. Men who adopt the profession of arms submit their own free will to the law of perpetual constraints of their own accord. They reject their right to live where they choose, to say what they think, to dress as they like. From the moment they become soldiers, it needs but an order to settle them in this place, to move them, to that separate them from their families and dislocate their normal lives. In the world of command, they must rise, march, run, endure bad weather, and go out without sleep or food. Be isolated in some distant post, work until they drop. They have ceased to master of their own fate. If they drop their tracks, their ashes shall be scattered in the four winds. That is all part of parcel of their job. Pledge of loyalty. If you work for a man, in heaven's name, work for him, speak well of him, and stand by the institution that he represents. Remember, an ounce of loyalty is worth a pound of cleverness. If you must growl, condemn, and eternally find fault, why not resign your position? And when you are in the outside, damn to your heart's contents. But as long as you are in the part of this institution, do not condemn it. If you do, the first high wind that comes along will blow you away, and probably you'll never know why. Military courtesy, an act of politeness, civility, and respect that a personnel in the military organization accord to one another. Military discipline. It is a state of order and obedience existing within a command. Military leadership. It is the process of influencing men in such a manner to accomplish the mission. Military secrecy. What you see, what you hear, when you leave it here. Salute is the highest form of courtesy. 11 general orders. Number 1. To take charge of this post and all government property in view. Number 2, to walk my post in all military manner, keeping always on alert and observing everything that takes place within sight of hearing. Number 3, to report all violation of orders I am instructed to enforce. Number 4, to refute all calls from post more distant from guardhouse than my own. Number 5, to keep my post only when property relieved. Number 6, to receive, obey, and pass on the sentinel who relieves me, all from the commanding officer, officer of the day, and non-commissioned officer of the guard only. Number 7, to talk to no one except in line of duty. Number 8, to give the alarm in case of fire or disorder. Number 9, to call the commander of the guard in any case that covered by instruction. Number 10, to salute all officers, colors and standard not kissed. Number 11, to be especially one watchful at night and during the time of challenging to challenge all persons on near my post and to allow no one to pass without proper authority.